Hotep, greetings, peace, all that good stuff. Before we begin, as usual, we get to a couple quick announcements. As I mentioned in last week's video, just to remind people, still got a couple of emails after last week's video about the next set of events, or is there any events this month. Again, no events this month. We're going to reconvene next month. The end of January, probably more than likely January 27th is the date, which is a Saturday. Information on what the ritual will be will come out end of this month, going into next month. So again, no events this month. We will be back on the radio show this upcoming Thursday, December 7th. And more than likely sometime at the end of this month, I'm going to get a confirmation. More than likely we'll be doing a class down in Miami, just myself. I'll get that information. That's not set in stone yet. So we pretty much from November through the new year, kind of just taking a break and reconvening the beginning of next month. So that's the plan. So if you didn't see last week's video, or you were wondering, just in case so you don't send an email, that's what's going on as far as that. Consultations kind of thick right now. They've actually picked up in the last 2 weeks, so I'm about 3 days in between. So if you do contact me for a consultation, I'm kind of asking, 48, 2 to 3 days time period, more so 3, trying to schedule them accordingly. If you're interested in a consultation, which I again like to clarify at the beginning of the video, so you don't have to email me what is a consultation and how does the consultation work. Again, real simple, lasts up until 1 hour, or when we're done at 1 hour, whichever one comes first, but maximum time 1 hour. I do charge $52 to do it. It can be paid via PayPal or Square. It can be done in person if you can get to me face to face. If you cannot, it can be done on a social media platform. I do prefer Google Hangouts because it just seems I get the best reception. I do it on Skype, but sometimes Skype acts up. It's not as good as Google Hangouts. I've also done them on email or any type of Android or cell phone app, etc. But Google Hangouts being the first choice. So that's the way we can do it. Again, some people have emailed me. It can be done straight over the phone if that's what you choose, but I prefer where we can have some type of interaction. So again, you can contact me if you are interested in a consultation at khnum19@gmail.com. Contact me in reference to setting up an appointment, since now you know and you have the information on how that works. So I just want to throw that out there, get those announcements out of the way. And again, we'll be back on Awakening Universal Minds radio show Thursday, December 7th at 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Alright, so what I want to kind of talk about, because I want to revisit, because this has come up in recent emails, questions, and things people have sent me in the last week or so. I want to talk a little bit about chakra, or chakra work, from a left-hand path perspective, spell casting and candle magic, and kind of connect the two, because we'll connect those 3 elements, I should say. Chakra work is important if you approach it from a practical standpoint. What I mean by that is, there's a lot of people over the years, as I've dealt with many people from many different places over the years, are under this illusion, because they have a certain level of knowledge that they think that they have, and they think their crown chakra is vibrating and the crown chakra is wide open and they're such in tune, and then boom, some crazy shit happens, or blockages come, and just as quick as they were at their high or peak, or what they thought was their high or peak, they just get knocked down, and it just seems like that a standstill. They can't get nowhere with everything that they're doing. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be financially, it could be career wise, it could be relationship wise, health wise, etc. I think there's a misunderstanding of how the chakras work and a misinterpretation of confusing your pineal gland from being opened, quote unquote, your brow chakra and your crown chakra. Okay? It starts, the key word is root. It starts in the root chakra. Okay? And I can't stress that enough. People bypass the root and the throat chakra, the heart chakra. These have to be vibrating at a correct frequency for your pineal gland to be open or your brow chakra and your crown chakra. I don't understand how one can say their crown chakra is open, but yet most of the people that say this are not grounded in reality. What do I mean by grounded in reality? I said this before. Most people get so spooky and spiritual, it's an escape for them of not dealing with the everyday world, but dealing with everyday life. And what I mean by that is your reflection of where you claim to be on your level of spirituality, as I said before, should reflect on where you are physically in the world in some shape, form, or fashion. And I'm not saying, granted, don't misinterpret, I'm not saying you have to be a millionaire, etc. That's not what I'm saying. But you should be consistently successful. The problem with the inconsistency that I've seen people who are very spiritual, have a lot of knowledge, or portray themselves to be very spiritual and have a lot of knowledge. But again, in dealing with everyday life, they're struggling. They're struggling with their money, struggling with their finances, family life, etc. Because there's no focus on being grounded in your root chakra. Now, how does this tie into candle magic and spell casting? Let's dispel a couple of myths on that. Because spell casting is just, when you hear the word spell, and to be honest with you, it's not a word that I'm crazy about using, because it's, again, when people hear the word spell, they think of, again, ridiculous things like witches and ghouls and goblins, and witches. That's not what a witch or a warlock is. A witch or a warlock is a magician, does cast spells, but there's not just spells to harm or destroy someone. And believe me, those exist in various different practices. Be it African witchcraft and sorcery, the Voodoo pantheon, Palo, working with spirits of the dead. When you're saying the word spell or spell casting, or one casting a spell, you have to be clear cut on what you mean and how you're utilizing that. Now, I found an effective method, and the reason why I took the terms for this particular video or class dealing with root work, or chakra work, and tying it into spell casting and working with candle magic, I found it very effective because understanding the colors and what those colors represent as far as vibration and frequency, understanding certain aspects of aromas. When I say aromas, be it incense, oils, stones, and I don't want to sound too new agey or fluffy, because this is where the disconnect comes, because people get spooked. But when you know how to work with the crystals, and you know how to work with certain incense and resins, and you know how to work with the colors to work with your specific chakras, like for an example, let's talk about the root chakra. And I think I went excuse me, over some of this briefly in an old video a while back. The color red, anything red, reddish, brown, or of a brownish, reddish hue in that family, is an effective color or candle to burn when trying to be grounded in your root chakra. Simple techniques one can use to work on their chakras and get them vibrating at the correct frequency could be as simple as taking a brown or red candle, which again ties them into the element of the earth, and focus on that candle and visualize being grounded, and visualize work or healing energy, for lack of a better word, being focused on that particular chakra. Also, while you're doing that, visualize what it is in the physical world that you're struggling with. Visualization is an important tool. These are all spiritual techniques, on this path. They are forms of magic. It's just knowing how to utilize the power of that magic by way of the mental. And this is where the disconnect comes in, because people struggle with this. this is what or what I meant in the past when I said it's not just about lighting a candle, and poof, your problems dissolve. And I'm not saying that's what some people think. I'm just using it as a metaphor because unfortunately, there are some people out there. I'm not saying all that do think like that, and it doesn't work. It's not effective. So when you're doing particular work with that chakra, and again, I'm using the root chakra for an example. You can also use the correlating stone or crystal. And a simple technique is holding that particular stone and placing it near the chakra that you're doing the visualization for. And focus as that candle burns. Remember, that color emits the frequency and the vibrational energy that's necessary to provide activation to that particular chakra. These are simple techniques that you can combine candle magic, visualization, a form of mental spell casting, or manipulating the subconscious mind to get it to work in your favor. And again, why this is important is because, again, if the root chakra is not functioning at its correct capacity, you might think your pineal gland is activated and your crown chakra is, but that's just not the case. So again, it's just like anything else. A lot of people want to go from point A to Z, but skip everything in the middle. They just want to go straight from A, then to Z, and not do the work in the middle. And this shit just doesn't work like that. There is a part of this aspect on this path. This path isn't all about, as some people misinterpret and think, just dreary darkness, gloom, and doom. There is a high level of spirituality to this path. And another question that was brought forward from a very newcomer to this path had asked the question: Do we do meditation techniques and visualizations on this path? Of course we do, but our meditations are probably going to be a little bit different than what people on lighter philosophies or right hand path philosophies do. We also go into deep states of meditation to address the things that are not correct about ourselves. And again, I want to stress to somebody new that might be watching the video, or some of the newer people that send emails, that's probably one of the key differences between this and anything else. We don't find excuses for our shortcomings on this path. We don't try to bury them and avoid them and mask them and engulf ourselves in some philosophy or dogma that we think is going to bury it or cover up. We don't do that. When doing correct meditations or really locking into your true inner self, you recognize everything about yourself. I can't stress that enough. Everything, good, the bad, your strengths, your weaknesses. And again, the only way one can proceed successfully on this path is basically recognizing both aspects of them. And when you're able to do that, then you can move forward and make those corrections. So in relationship to the chakras, what tends to happen is, for an example, people that maybe have a hard time expressing themselves. These are people sometimes that they have a lot maybe to say or give input, but they struggle with expressing themselves. They stay laid back and timid, or they're taken advantage of, and they're never able to vocalize or express by way of action or just their voice, saying what's on their mind. This is a disconnect from, for an example, the throat chakra, because the throat chakra deals with expression, and sometimes lack or the weakness of not being able to express yourself holds some people back. Some people, just for whatever reason, there's a mental blockage there, and they're not able to express themselves. And expressing yourself too could be also not bullshitting yourself. What do I mean by that? Sometimes you might say something to express yourself. There's an old saying, say what you mean to mean what you say. So a lack also of not being able to express yourself is expressing yourself the wrong way, saying the wrong things. One aspect on this path that can be a little overwhelming for some people, not all, is a person that's on this path doesn't have an issue of just getting straight to the point with things, no matter what it is. And it's sometimes, as blunt as that might seem, It can come off maybe callous. It can come off maybe a little bit raw or aggressive. But it's not meant to be that way. It's you find out on this path, and true expression is if you tend to get straight to the point and express yourself and call it for what it is and just say what it is and not beat around the bush and bullshit, you tend to save yourself a lot of headache and problems down the road. When you bullshit yourself by saying bullshit, let's per se, whether it's a work-related matter, whether it's personal, relationship, whatever it is, all you really are doing is delaying and stagnating or stifling the situation and building up a lot of resistance, and it's not going to work. So some people have an issue with that because their throat chakra needs work. Or they're not focusing. And again, I'm focusing on these lower chakras first because all I hear is people talk about their pineal gland is open in their crown. I'm telling you, it's a bunch of bullshit. It's a bunch of bullshit because there should be an overall, when you look at somebody, they should be well-rounded. Okay? You, again, as I've said before, and I don't think people understand it correlated. And again, it's not to knock or criticize, but you should be a representation of the information you teach. I mean, you should be a living example of it. When I say well-rounded, you can't be rich in knowledge and wisdom and poor everywhere else. And again, I don't buy the false philosophy of, being in poverty is spiritual and don't be in the world but not of it. See, that's all excuses again for not succeeding. But the point is, we are in the world. We live in a world where in order to be successful, we need to have money, okay? We need to have certain things to maintain our existence here. Now, if you want to take on the hermit philosophy and be some guru that's going to sit in silence and meditation and use that lack of success and claim that's part of being some spiritual monk or guru, then that's fine for you. But on this path, that's not, what we choose to do. What we do, again, which is key, is how does one mesh the objective realm and the subjective realm and make them kind of work together? Well, again, as I said before, and I think I mentioned this in last week's video, one of the biggest challenges is going into your subjective realm, okay? And a true black magician goes into their subjective realm and is able, again, if you want to call it a higher form of astral travel, but leaving the body, for lack of a better word, vibrating out of person, place, or thing. Remember, when somebody is confined to a three-dimensional existence, they are at the mercy of the laws of person, place, or thing, or three dimension. When one is able to travel to their or tap into their subjective realms, or the many universes that exist in the subconscious mind, and one's able to do that by leaving person, place, and thing, by vibrating at a higher frequency. And when one is able to not be confounded to the limitations that are imposed upon us here, now we're able to tap into unlimited potential. And you can go about in your subjective realm to bring about or force your will to bring about the change in the desired outcome that you're trying to obtain. The challenge is, how do you mesh that and bring that to the objective realm? Well, this is why I'm bringing up the techniques that I'm bringing up. It can be done in a multitude of ways. One, through meditation and visualization, which can lead to higher states of consciousness, can prepare you for obtaining, the things that I'm talking about, because it ties into the alchemical or alchemy sciences of one making themselves less dense. What does that mean? What does it mean when it says one needs to make themselves less dense? There was a book that I referred to in some earlier videos a couple years ago. We even talked about it on the radio show. Dennis William Hook, Alchemy for Personal Transformation, the Crystal Tablets. He talks about in there, which is very important, and it's gonna vary from individual to individual depending upon what's going on in their life. Step one, it's unique because in that book he talks about starting basic. Analyze what's going on around you currently, your life, your situation, your circles you move in, your work, your career. we're going to find out when in order for one to make themselves less dense, they need to be in control of their lives and eliminate certain things that might be weighing them down, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. When one is weighed down heavily, be it via stress, problems of the world that they don't have no control over or lack of control, and those things are controlling them. I talked about a thing a while back. The pineal gland becomes calcified. It's blocked. You can't receive the messages. You can't receive, being what we call on this path connected to the black flame, right? We call it the black flame. In other circles, they call it melanin, which has its origin and root to everything in existence in the universe. I'm talking about neuromelanin, because when the pineal gland is not calcified and it's vibrating at its correct frequency, one is able to effectively tap into the power of how that neuromelanin works, which has its origin in the brain. And it becomes like a conductor which can receive messages of consciousness that connects one to everything in the universes, okay? Which gives one the ability now to really tap into the unlimited potential of their subconscious mind or subjective realm. So it takes a lot of discipline. Part of that process is, and this is where the aspect of the chakras come in, and the connection with the chakras and their correct functioning, again, starting from the root chakra on up to the crown. You can't bypass the root, the heart, the throat, etc., and just go straight to the pineal, the brow, and the crown when you haven't done the proper work on them. So what tends to happen is when people do not have the ability to make themselves less dense, so they are open mentally, emotionally, and spiritually to receive the correct vibrations and frequencies, to get them functioning at their correct capacity, when that pineal gland becomes calcified, they kind of disconnect themselves. Again, what alchemy, and again, I'm using alchemical or alchemy terms, calls, the divine consciousness of the universe, for lack of a better word. And again, I'm using alchemy terms. That poses a problem, because when that disconnect is in full effect, one now struggles in their everyday life with everything. It's a trickle-down effect with their emotions, with their anger, with their jealousy, with connecting their family, with their sexuality, sex drive, sexual frustration. It can even affect very simple, mundane things like their diet, because when people are not in a correct state of mind, or they might be dealing with bouts of hormonal issues or disconnect states of depression, etc., the diet is affected, where some get a lack of diet where they don't feel like eating, or some overindulge in food, because there's something that has to fill the void and take place of the emotion. And usually that's submerged in food, or it could be some other addiction. And sometimes, unfortunately, it's drugs. And this poses a problem, okay? It poses a huge problem, because when you're disconnected like that, you have to, I'm going to use something basic to visualize. It's like having this concrete wall in front of you, and nothing can penetrate it. So you've disconnected yourself, from the aspect of what we call all is mental, mental is all. But in order to tap in to the many different universes in your subjective, your subjective mind or subjective universes, one has to be, it's like a well-oiled machine. One has to be vibrating at the most sharpest and full capacity that one can. One has to be very aware. It starts with awareness. Now, I can testify, when I do certain work, it can become very draining, and that's a normal effect when doing some ritualistic work. You become very drained. You feel like a lot of energy has been taken from you. Remember, the laws of the universe always say somebody is always giving at some point in time, and somebody is always receiving. That process never stops. There's always a giving and receiving process. But one has to take the level of awareness. If you've done certain spiritual work and you feel drained, you can't just leave it at that and try to sleep it off. You should do things also counterproductive to recharge yourself. Vice versa. I've also found people that practice vampirism sometimes struggle because they overabsorb. And when you overabsorb energy through vampirism practices, you can drain yourself. Liken it to overeating. What happens when you overeat? You can get lazy. We call it the itis. You can get lazy, tired, or sick. because you intake too much food. And remember, food, as we know, also carries a large abundance of energy. Well, when practicing vampirism and you're trying to absorb the spiritual energy of something, be it an archetype, a deity, or an individual, or if you're going to astrally travel to do some work, to go, maybe to another individual's locale and absorb energy from them, you got to be careful, because if you don't understand, the limitations, or your personal limitations of what is enough for you, that can be very draining. Okay, it can be very draining. So awareness is a key factor. Know your limits. Now, it does take a little bit of experimenting to figure out what your limits are. But take heed. If you've used the vampirism technique and you become drained, that shouldn't happen. It should vitalize and charge you. Or also be cautious of this. Some people practice vampirism and they get so charged at first, and then when that energy wears off, they become super drained. That shouldn't happen either. It's okay if that happens at first, because you're new and you're experimenting, but if it's continuously happening, that means you're over absorbing. This again ties into making yourself less dense. So making yourself less dense in a nutshell is ridding yourself of everything that is weighing you down. So sometimes we're taking on too much that's not necessary. And I'm talking about too much on a mental level, emotional level, spiritual level, and physical level. Physical level could be an intake of the wrong foods, or too much food, or lack of food. Okay, because as I said before, we always focus just on sometimes overweight or too much weight. But then there's some people, I got to keep it real. There's some people that are slim or skinny. There's a healthy skinny slim, and there's a sickly looking skinny slim. And I can look at somebody, there's just some skinny slim that does not look healthy. You can usually tell by in the face, the drop of the face, right below the eyes. When the face usually drops and you can see that whole skeletal structure sometimes if you look close, that's not a healthy slim. So dealing with the physical and food, remember, lack of food or not the right foods, or somebody that's slim. Not everybody that's slim or skinny is healthy. And vice versa. You might see somebody that's husky or overweight or big. Not all of it is due to, being a glutton or overeating. Some people have, the thyroid ain't vibrating at its correct capacity, or it's overactive or underactive, etc. So know your connection and your roles physically and your limitations there. Spiritually, are you ingesting the wrong shit? Are you studying the wrong shit? Because that can weigh you down. Because if you're studying and practicing, stuff spiritually that's not productive, and you don't feel like you're getting anywhere, or you've been doing it for so long just because for whatever reason you've been faithful to it for years or whatever, but you're not getting any results, that is stuff that's making you more dense and weighing you down. So are you taking in the correct information and spiritual information and knowledge that's productive for you? And again, that's going to vary from individual to individual, because at your starting point, wherever you're at now in your spirituality, how you're evolving, is going to vary again from individual to individual. So the process again is not going to be the same for every individual. There's not one set plan or blueprint that this is how you're supposed to do it. So part of that is a self-evaluation process. Mentally, this is important too. Are you in sound body and mind? Okay? And I found this to be a huge problem. People want to do all of this hardcore black magic, but they're fucked up here in the head. And you do more damage to yourself. I can't stress that enough. You can't skip the preparational work. You can't skip doing the groundwork that's going to lay out the blueprint to get you to doing those higher levels, whether you want to call it high magic, greater black magic, etc. I've seen people dive in and damage themselves more. They might have got results, early or quickly in some scenarios, but as time progressed down the road, shit just went haywire for them because they weren't in a sound mind and a sound body, but more or less talking about the mental. Because what affects the mental automatically affects the physical. The physical is going to carry it out. You're gonna act how you feel. If you feel fucked up, you're gonna act fucked up. If you feel good, you're gonna act, good. You're gonna show how you feel good. If you, in your mind you don't think of yourself highly, it's gonna reflect in your mannerisms, your personality, and your behavior. So are you in sound mind and sound body? Okay, you can't just go into doing work with the spirits of the dead, or doing work with La Santa Muerte, the Holy Death, if you're not in a sound mind, because it will fuck you up. Or the Vodun Pantheon. You can say to yourself, no, because the process, which is tricky in working black magic, you may not realize at first it could be doing damage because you think you're getting some results, and you might get some results right away. But long term, you'll see the effect. So again, sound mind and sound body cannot be negated. That's one of the most important things on this path. That's stress. Make sure you're in good mental health. You know what I mean? You can't come on this path with mental illnesses or work or do spiritual work on this path in a messed up state of mind. It'll mess you up. Trust me, I promise you. I've seen it, and I don't say that to scare people, because those that know me over the years, I ain't into all that spooky shit. But I will keep it 100% straight to the point. I have seen it mess people up, and I wouldn't want to see that happen to anybody. Because what happens is sometimes people open themselves up to a certain level of spirituality that their mind's not ready to perceive or absorb, and it does more damage. And what can tend to happen is that person starts to hear voices, or they become susceptible to walk-in entities. Because now let's back up to dealing with the chakras. Because remember, the chakras in any metaphysical spiritual system, they'll tell you the chakras vibrate and give off a color. We call that your aura, right? You hear the term aura. What is the aura? Well, by what your vibrational mood is, it kind of reflects the aura that you're giving off and what's around you. Now, if you understand how spiritual energies work and how some of these intelligent energies work, whether you want to call them archetypes, ancestors, how these all work is they are attracted to that aura that you are giving off. It all depends on the colors of that aura, but the darker hues, the ambers, the kind of darker purplish looking colors, etc., tend to give off, or what they say, the grays too, tend to give off more of a negative frequency, which attracts negative energy. So these spiritual energies, for lack of a better word, or when we're talking about spirits, ancestral beings, living entities, quote unquote, on the other side, and I'm just using terms people can connect with, tend to see that and gravitate towards it like a magnet. And when your countenance is low, because you're not in a stable mental mind state, those walk-ins or spiritual energies can work their way in through your crown chakra, because your crown chakra is what gives off that light or that color. And they can get inside your body, literally. I don't want to use the word possession. I'm trying to keep it more scientifical. And they can alter your moods. They can alter your states of consciousness, where you don't feel like yourself. Where, you've heard people commit violent or heinous crimes and say they were temporarily insane, or something came over them and they don't know what it was. That's because they were opened up and susceptible to some type of walk-in energy that made them think outside of themselves. They were not in control of their mental mind state. I'm trying to remove the spookism. I want to use the word possession and all that spooky shit, because that's not factually scientific. But one, consciousness can be altered, not to their benefit, if they're just a person that's not in control of their mental health. Their emotions can be controlled. And this has been talked about many times. I've talked about this. It's the same way, through the media, through politics, through society, of how they try to work on us mentally by controlling our emotions, be it through advertisements, movies, TV, etc., all these things. They know what makes us tick. They know how to alter our thinking and how we're going to respond. And this is why I keep telling people, Be careful when you go on all these social media sites. How you use them is key. People go on to Facebook and shit and say all the dumbest shit. And all you got is people monitoring your responses. So now what you're doing is you're giving them a calculated report of how you think by the way you respond. So now they know how to market to you. They know your likes and dislikes. They know what to set up in your communities and your neighborhoods and certain areas and states. They know, you're basically telling them everything about yourself. Now, again, not to get into the conspiracy theory, but there was a movie that came out about a year or two ago. A lot of people might have seen it. Some people might not have. If you hadn't seen the movie Snowden, everybody knows who Eric Snowden is. That was the, dude who is now seeking, who has sought asylum in Russia, who was accused of, selling. He was a spy for Russia, selling government information to Russia. Well, there's a little more to the story. You'll see in the movie Snowden how they use all of that social media intelligence, everything. Cell phone, just by certain words you say, we say right here on YouTube, it's all linked into a database where it just triggers a response. Certain words that you say, and not only that, it links you in to every, like Facebook. They show you in the movie how when you say something and they tap into you and are able to tap into, say, your Facebook account, they can go into all your contacts. And they can investigate all your friends and people and see how it's all intertwined. I mean, that's a whole nother video and a whole nother class. But I'm telling you this is real because in this new cyber age that we're living in right now, I know we're kind of drifting a little from the topic, but need to get into this. In this new cyber age that we're in, as I said before, social media is a great tool, but it also can be, it has its disadvantages, it has its crutches. Because it's something that can be utilized against us. The power of reaching so many people simultaneously, there's also flaws in that. And the powers that be, for lack of a better word, have learned to manipulate that. So this all has an effect on us, whether we're aware of it or not. It's changed the way we think. It's because we have so much access to so much information. I mean, just go back 20 years ago. You understand what I'm saying? When you didn't have all this social media, when you just couldn't Google something at your fingertips. Mental stability was probably, and I'm going to say this, in a better state than it is now. Because with all this social media, it gives the ability to get access to people's emotions a lot quicker. Because now you have to think about you're constantly being fed media 24/7. You understand what I'm saying? You're watching TV for a portion of the day. You're listening to the radio or music in the car. More than likely, most people at work have a TV or a radio on. You do the same routine when you come home. You got something on in the car for the most part. You're on your phone, talking to somebody. You get in the house, boom, you pop the TV back on, you make dinner, TV, and you're being fed these frequencies and messages 24/7. Then after you're done with it, you're sitting down watching the TV or a movie, etc. The process starts all over. Well, this has an effect on you whether you're conscious of it or not, because you got all this stuff is being embedded in your subconscious. What you are aware of and what you are not aware of. They're just storing. It's like programming a computer. They're storing all this, and sometimes it takes you to get into a certain agitated state to bring that stress or that pressure out, whether you're aware of it or not. Okay? It's important to understand that. So, for mental stability, make sure you limit. Sometimes one of the best and most powerful things to do, and I'm telling you, do it. And you'll find out two things about yourself. You're either a disturbed individual or you're somebody that, is connected on a certain level to your higher self, inner self, whatever you want to call it. Sometimes sit in complete silence and darkness. No TV, no radio, no music, no incense, no candles. Just complete darkness and silence. You will get in tune with your real emotions, the real you. Those that struggle and cannot do that, either they get scared, they can't concentrate, or they can't focus. that's a telltale sign you have work to do on yourself. Your soul is disturbed. You are not providing it with enough of the spirituality or correct energy to get it to vibrate and function at its full capacity. You're under the illusion. You think you're in tune with your real self, but you're not. But that real self will emerge in that darkness as you sit there. Your thoughts will become intense. Shit might start rising up and coming to the surface that might be bizarre, that might seem frightening, because you're now in a state where you can confront it. So the thing is, are you going to run from it and avoid it, or are you going to deal with it head on? It can be uncomfortable at first. It's a very basic, simple practice that enough of us don't do. You understand? Because the fear of people that can't do it, when I said before in the past, we've done this with a multitude of people in a group setting where we've just sat in silence and darkness, and then I've said before, I think I mentioned this shit, you hear people fidgeting around. You hear people's clothes ruffling, moving, changing position. You hear legs moving, their arms moving, they're breathing. This is because when that silence and darkness kicks in, the only thing that exists there at that moment is you. And that's why you eliminate all the external influences. This will help you to understand where you are mentally and conscious wise. Okay? It's a very simple, basic practice, but I guarantee you not everybody can do it successfully. So that is probably one of the most powerful things one can do to really see what shape they are in mentally. You understand what I'm saying? So this is important, okay, when practicing spiritual techniques on this path. So we talked about spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically, and connected all four of those aspects, okay, and connected it to the chakras. So before you start getting into my pineal gland and brow chakra and my crown chakra and open, look, make sure your lower chakras are vibrating. It's like a well-oiled machine. They all have to be working in conjunction with each other. You can't it just doesn't work like that. Okay? There's little techniques, again, as I said before, one can use. I refer to the candle magic, the crystals, knowing certain oils and fragrances, incense and resins, just the smell of certain aromas that activate and bring healing energy to those specific chakras are important to understand. And also study yourself mentally, because the effect, also astrology plays a particular part in this, should never hinder you from doing your work, but some people's spiritual powers and mental energies are at higher frequencies under certain astrological signs. So pay attention. Why I'm saying that is, pay attention to certain times of the month where you might see a pattern where, why am I always sharper at this point? Pay attention to the sign, the astrological sign that the planet or the moon or that's passing through. Maybe that is your sign where your spiritual powers are more heightened for whatever particular reason. You understand? Because whatever astrological sign that might be, there's something connected to you spiritually there. Now remember, which is, again, something I'm not saying when working magic, and I don't want to say this because there's some people that become so strictly confined when in spell casting, they'll specifically only rely on particular astrological movements. That to me becomes religious. A true black magician or adept, doesn't matter what day of the week it is or time of the week it is, when you get yourself to a point where you're functioning sharp, honestly that shit is irrelevant. But I'm talking about more so in early stages. Pay attention, because you might start developing a plan when doing ritualistic work. It might be just better, depending on the type of work you're doing, it might be better during that particular period to carry that work out. This is all getting to know your strengths and your weaknesses and knowing how this all ties in. So this is important, and I don't want to go off on a tangent on too much, because I don't like to do long drawn out videos, then you don't get nothing of it. I like to keep it at a decent time limit, because then it just becomes overkill. So I think we touched on enough to get you to think about until next week. So really focus on that stuff: sound mind, sound body, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically is key. It is important to function at that capacity to be successful on this path. And again, one of the most beautiful things about this path, it addresses every aspect you can think of. It's not, here's the manual or the scripture, follow this, and at the end you're going to get pie in the sky. It's not that type of path. It's a constant work in progress. It's constant work in progress because you're changing all the time. You're not the same today that you were 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago, maybe even 3, 4, 5 months ago. So one particular blueprint or plan is not going to be effective because you have to come up with a system that's conducive to change along with you as you're changing. You understand? That's important to understand. If you're not changing, with that system that you put in place, and you see yourself just stagnating and not evolving, then that becomes a problem. Now we gotta take an inventory or stock of ourselves. What's wrong? What's going on? Why is this happening? Why am I having problems? Why am I struggling? And address those things. Don't just find external reasons and excuses for them. Oh, well, that didn't work because, such and such, had it out for me. Well, if you're a black adept and a black magician, you can eliminate that shit if somebody's in your way or blocking you. I know I can. And whatever energy you invest in it, that's the results you're going to get out of it. And whatever you don't invest yourself with and don't want to be bothered with, it just stays its ass away from you. Okay? I mean, look, it's not that complicated. One thing I found out over the years, people tend to make shit more complicated than it actually is, which creates the complication matters in itself. Sometimes the shit ain't even really that deep, but people keep tending to make it deep because some people are magnets for drama. You understand? And a black adept is always in control of their emotions. Never lets their emotions get the best of them. It doesn't mean they can't get angry. It doesn't mean they have moments, because that's human nature. But there's a certain way to go about doing things. Again, as I said before, which is another concept I think a lot of people don't understand, it's not what you do, it's how you do it. You understand that? That's an important concept to understand on this path. Remember, it's not what you do, it's how you do it. And as I said before, a real spiritual warrior, a real quote-unquote guru, a real master or adept of the black arts stands in the shadows. They don't talk about the shit and brag about the shit and want to tell everybody and claim what they can do. They just keep and move in silence. Okay? Real magicians or black adepts, the only person that they're worried about convincing is themselves, getting the results themselves. They don't walk around bragging about what they think they can or cannot do, etc., and making a fool of themselves. They stay, remember, a real black adept stays in the shadows. Okay? It's a hard lesson for people to learn because the ego sometimes kicks in, and sometimes we just can't keep our mouths shut, and we expose ourselves too much, and then we open ourselves up to enemies that we may not be aware of. So what's the lesson in that? Sometimes just shut the fuck up and do what you got to do. It's that simple. Don't tell everybody your business. Don't tell everybody what you do. Don't tell everybody what you know. You understand? It's not for everybody. Okay? That's a hard pill or lesson for some people to swallow. And I watch people's mouths. They'll say, don't write a check. Don't say something with your mouth. Or make a claim that you can't live up to. Is basically what it's saying. But anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I think we covered enough. Again, real quick reminder, we will be back on the radio show Thursday night, December 7th, 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, Awakening Universal Minds. I'll post a link here on the YouTube. I will see possibility of class at the end of this month here in Miami, Florida, that I'm going to do. Again, not set in stone. I'll find out about that in the next day or two, and I'll put that out there if that's the case. We will resume our ritualistic activities early beginning of next year, January, the end of the month. More information on that to come. And again, if you are interested in a consultation, you can hit me up at that email address, khnum19@gmail.com. We can set up an appointment for that consultation. And again, as I've said before, if you want to work with spirits, your ancestors, those communications come through in those consultations. Some people just use the consultation because they want information on how to start out on this path. Some people want to learn about advanced topics. Whatever it is you want to deal with one-on-one, you pretty much dictate the flow of that consultation. So if you want to set up an appointment for that, again, khnum19@gmail.com. You can use that email address for any inquiries. And again, I like say this, it's impossible for me to answer every email. I can't do it. So again, don't take offense if you don't get a response to your email. I try my best. Obviously, consultations. The first thing I have to look for when I scan my emails are those, because obviously these are people that are paying, customers that I'm providing a service for. So if you do send an email for consultation, title the subject, which most people do. Title the subject consultation. I look for those first when I open up my email box, because I try to get to those people first. Sometimes it's just as hard for me. People send me questions. I just don't have the time to sit at the computer and answer questions all day. I just can't do it. I'm sorry. I try to do majority of it on the video. I do sometimes get the time, and I randomly pick people I respond to. It's no particular process. There are some people I do have a personal relationship with. They contact me, email. Clients that I've been working with the last couple of years, I definitely interact with them because I've established some type of personal relationship with them. So I like to put that out there. It's just I don't want to think anybody that I'm neglecting them. It's just impossible. As I said before, it's not all that I do. It's just impossible for me to do that. So I try my best. All right. So having said that, appreciate everybody tuning in. Have no idea what we'll talk about next week. I just thought about this topic right before we came on the air again. Just figured something that was on my mind. How was I going to combine all these emails and kind of mesh it into one topic? So this is what we came up with. So I hope this video helped. Hope it pushes you and gives you some guidance in the right direction, or maybe had answered some questions to other people that are watching this video, things that they might have on their mind. All right, peace.